see them begin to take form and take shape, right? Begin to come together in your life. Now, does that mean it's going to be, flowing and going and like 100% set up and done? Maybe not. Maybe not, because some of you have some dreams and some visions and things that God has been showing you that are quite massive, and it's going to honestly take some time and some years for you to build that business up, for you to build up that thing that you've been seeing, and then others. He's still, like I said the other day, going to do a quick work in that you're going to be able to start the business, launch the business, do the business, have the business, and it be successful, right? But I know that case in point, the one of the visions that God gave me, I believe it's going to get started in 2024. I believe it's going to be up and growing and even prosperous in 2024. However, I don't know if I'll see the full effects and residuals of it until some years down the road, as it has had time to mature and to grow and to become what I see and know that it can and should become from the vision that God has given me. So, so what am I saying? I'm saying all that to say this, that you know we have these visions. God has given us these visions. We've been praying, we've been fasting, we've been trusting, we've been asking, and God has spoken and He has given us this vision, and we've even dealt with some of the issues and things that can cause the vision and the dream to not come to pass as we think it ought to, right? We've talked about and dealt with some things that can hinder our dream and keep it from getting where it is supposed to be. I've talked about your attitude. I've talked about your unforgiveness. I've talked about your perspective. I've even talked about your humility, right? Being humble, and then we even talked about excuse me. We've even talked about not getting distracted, right? Well, I need to take it a step further. I need to take it a step further because, see, there is one other thing that can stop, that can hinder, that can block what God wants to do in your life, right? The one There is one other thing that can stop the vision that God has given you from coming to pass, and I want to help you to realize the vision and see the vision and see it come to pass. And I don't want anybody or anything hindering you, blocking you, or stopping you. So let's go ahead and dive right on into it, shall we? All right. As we dive into this and begin to talk about this, somebody said, well, what is that one thing? What is that one thing? And I'm glad you asked. I want you to go with me to Luke chapter number 1. Luke chapter number 1. And when you're in Luke chapter number 1, it talks about, or it tells us the story of Zacharias, right? Zacharias. And we understand and know, right? We understand and we know that Zacharias was the father of John the baptizer, right? John the Baptist. John who was declaring and decreeing the way of the Lord, right? And so we understand that's who Zacharias is. And God came and well, I say He came. He sent His angel, right? He sent His angel Gabriel to speak a word to Zacharias, to give Zacharias the vision, right? If you will, in person. Many of us have not had a visitation from an angel to come and speak to us and say, this is the vision of the Lord, or this is the word of the Lord, right? And so, we haven't had an in person visitation, but Zacharias had an in person visitation. Zacharias was working in the temple. He was a priest and he was working in the temple, and it was his turn or his time to serve. And let me just read this for you. It says, "There was in the days of Herod, the king of Judah, a certain priest named Zacharias of the division of Abijah. All right, his wife was of the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. And when they were both, I'm sorry, let me read that again. It says, and they were both righteous before God, walking in all the commandments and ordinances, right, of the Lord, blameless. But they had no child because Elizabeth was barren, and they were both well advanced in years. So it was that while he was serving as priest before God in the order of his division, according to the custom of the priesthood, his lot fell to burn incense, and he went into the temple of the Lord, and the whole multitude of the people was praying outside at the hour of incense. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him standing on the right side of the altar of incense. And when Zacharias saw him, he was troubled, and fear fell upon him. But the angel said to him, "Do not be afraid, Zacharias, for your prayer is heard, and your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you shall call his name John, and you will have joy and gladness, and many will rejoice at his birth, for he will be great in the sight of the Lord, and shall not drink or and shall drink neither wine nor strong drink. He will be filled with the Holy Spirit even from his mother's womb, and he will turn many of the children of Israel to the Lord their God. And he will also go before him, right? Being, he will go before Jesus in the spirit and the power of Elijah to turn the hearts of fathers to their children and the disobedient to the wisdom of the just, to make people ready and prepared, a people prepared for the Lord. Now, here's the thing. Again, this is the part I shared with you, that many of us have one thing left that keeps us from seeing the vision that God, or that would keep us from seeing the vision that God has for us. And I want you to see it right here. It's in Luke chapter number 1, starting at verse number 18. And Zacharias said to the angel, "How shall I know this? For I am an old man, and my wife is well advanced in years." And the angel answered and said to him, "I am Gabriel, who stands in the presence of God, and was sent to speak to you and bring you these glad tidings. But behold, you will be mute and not able to speak until the day that these things take place, because, look at here, you did not believe my words, which will be fulfilled in their own time." The thing that would hinder so many of us, the thing that would keep so many of us from seeing what God has for us, from seeing the vision that God has for us, is our unbelief. Many of you have had the vision or seen the vision, or you've seen it, and you don't believe it. You don't believe it's possible. Maybe you don't believe it's possible because of the education, the level of education that you have. Maybe, excuse me, you don't believe it's possible because of the amount of money you have in the bank. Maybe you don't believe it's possible because of where you come from, right? The neighborhood you grew up in, the people who you hung around. You know, you don't. Maybe you don't believe that it's possible because you've got a checkered past, and you've done some time in prison and this, that, and the other. Or maybe you're like Zacharias and you don't believe it's possible because of your advanced age. But I want to encourage you. I've got to let you know that it does not matter. It does not matter what odds or circumstances or things are stacked against you. It doesn't matter what's happened to you in your past. It doesn't matter. None of that, none of that, none of that matters. What does matter, let me just tell you, what does matter is when God shows you a vision, when God speaks a word into your life, do you have enough faith to just believe it? To just believe it, to just receive it. Do you have enough faith to believe? Do you have enough faith to believe that whatever it is that God said, that whatever it is that God showed you, it shall come to pass? And my pastor growing up, Pastor Philip H. Williamson, Sr., he would always say, and I'm just fool enough to believe. I'm just fool enough to believe that God will do what he said that he will do. I'm just fool enough to believe that God will do what he showed me that he will do. I just believe, I believe that God will come through. And I know some of you feel like that man who, you know, whose daughter, the man whose daughter was at the point of death, and then the servant came, or whatever, all that, and Jesus ended up saying to him, "All things are possible to him who only believes." And I know many of you feel just like that man, and you say, "Well, I believe, but help thou my unbelief." Help thou my unbelief. I know that's how some of us are out there. And as we prepare, right, we are so close. I mean, so close to the new year. And as a matter of fact, looking at it, we're about what, 2 weeks away. 2 weeks away. So I mean, you got next Monday is Christmas. The Monday after that, so 2 weeks away from a new year. And I don't want you to go into the new year. I don't want you to go into this next season still wrestling with your faith. Still wrestling if that thing is possible and can happen for you. I want you to know, I want you to grasp it. I want you to get it down in your spirit. I want you to hold on to it and believe it and know it to be true, just as much as you know that when you take your next step, that the ground is going to be right there. Just as much as you just trust and know that when you take that next breath, that air will still be there. That just as much as you know that when you sit down that the chair is going to be under you, right? I mean, it's just as much as you trust and know that when you go to the gas pump and you put the pump into your tank and you squeeze the trigger, just as much as you know that gas is actually going into that tank, and that when you crank up the car, it's going to register and show that you've got gas in there and it's going to be able to go. Just as you trust all those things, I need you to trust the vision that God gave you. That it is just as real and as solid as the ground you walk on. That it is just as ever present and there as the air that you breathe, right? That it is going to happen just the way it has and should happen, just like when you put your pump into the gas tank and squeeze that trigger. You just trust it. You trust it. You know it because it's happened time and time again. When you put the gas pump into your tank, that it did what it was supposed to do, that when, that the gas went where it was supposed to go, you trust and know that just that every time that you've breathed in air, that it was there, that we hadn't run out of air just of yet, right? You believe that every time you step, that that ground is solid underneath your feet. I need you to trust this vision that God gave you. I need you to trust. I need you to trust that God will do it for you. I'm telling you, I'm telling you, I'm telling you, without faith, without faith, it is impossible. It is impossible to please God. What does James say? James says, that James says it this way. He says that he says, any man lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who giveth liberally and abradeth not, right? And let him ask with faith and not doubting. Because he who doubts is like a man tossed by the winds of the sea. And then he says, let not this man think that he should receive anything from the Lord. So then, you can't expect to see the vision. You can't expect to receive even a vision, let alone it come to pass, if you don't have faith. If you don't have faith, you've got to get this faith thing down. You've got to just trust God that He is working, that He is working, that He is moving, that He is doing, that He is going to come through for you. You've got to trust that God has not forgotten about you. You've got to trust that God has a plan and a purpose for your life. And look at what happened with Zacharias. I'm so very grateful that even when our faith is a little shaky, even when our faith is a little bit, wavy, that God still blesses, that God still opens up doors. Because look at what happened with Zacharias. He said, listen, I'm gonna do this for you. Even though you don't believe, you're gonna be mute, you're gonna have to deal with that, but I'm still gonna do it because I have a plan and a purpose. I have a plan and a purpose. And these things have got to come to pass because I'm trying to fulfill some things in the earth realm. And some of you, you've been struggling with faith, and if you don't get the faith together, God's gonna still do it. He just may have to go around you. He may have to, and you're gonna have to sit and suffer in silence, watching. Now, thankfully, Zacchaeus, yeah, he was in silence, but he couldn't express his joy. He couldn't express, and then when he was crying and he had all these different issues, all that, right? They didn't understand it, and it wasn't until the son, and he said, "No, his name is John," right? Finally, finally, he was able to speak. And many of you, if you don't get this faith part right, you're gonna have to go through it in silence, and you're gonna have to watch other people, try to take credit and name and do stuff, and that should have been, or that is your baby. It was your idea. It was but if you could just get that faith, because see, that faith brings about boldness. That faith brings about, you know what I'm saying? Like when you get that, I'm gonna deal with this some more. I'm gonna deal with this some more in the days to come. But I need somebody to know and understand this last part right here. This faith part, it is so vital. This faith part is so important. Like if you miss this, you can have your attitude right. You can be forgave everybody who you need to forgive. You can be as humble as you need to be. You can make sure your perspective is right, and you can make sure you're not as distracted and or distracted at all. But if you don't have even the faith, I'm telling you, that faith, it is the key. It is the key. It is paramount. You've got to have your faith. You've got to have faith. Faith enough to say, you know what? All right, God, you showed me this. And because you showed it to me, I'm gonna walk on water. Because you showed it to me, I'm gonna go and find resources where there's not resources generally. The disciple was able to go and find a coin in a fish's mouth because God said so, because Jesus said so. Friends, I want to encourage you. I want to encourage you. God has given you the vision, and it's going to come to pass, but you've got to have faith. Faith enough to stand firm on it, the faith enough to believe it, faith enough to know that God's able to do it, that God's going to do it. Just as sure as can be, know that God's gonna do it. All right? All right, all right, all right. Friends, I've got to get into the 21 days of, I'm sorry, 12 days of Christmas giveaway. And I want you to keep it locked. I want you to keep it locked here at 93.5 KBPM. Because, like I said, we're not done by a long stretch. We've still got more show to do. We've got more 12 days of Christmas left to do. We've still got a grand finale to do on tomorrow. All right, we've got a grand finale to do tomorrow. And so I want to encourage you to keep it locked to 93.5. We are your community-minded station here on 93.5 KPPM.
Child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful,